It's a great honor for me to participate in this conference called Leading with Grit and Grace. It's such a lovely title, such a lovely theme for this conference. First of all, let me congratulate TalentNomics India and the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation for kind of hosting this very, very important event. I know from having interacted with TalentNomics, participated in earlier events, that they are doing a terrific job, inspiring women, providing opportunities for leadership and training, showcasing talent, so that more and more women can occupy really important positions across the corporate landscape in India. And of course, knowing Ipsita personally, I know that she's kind of a model of leading with grit and grace, oodles and oodles of grace, and frankly, too much grit than perhaps should be necessary, which kind of shows what the, kind of a little bit of the uphill battle that doing something like this needs in this context. Of course, this conference it's probably your most unusual conference because it comes in such strange, difficult, uncertain times. Of course, I'm speaking about COVID and how it's ravaged people and economies and livelihoods all over the world, induced stress, induced violence, induced unhappiness. And of course, we know from all the data that a lot of this impact has been felt disproportionately on minorities, and of course disproportionately on women who've had to kind of juggle with all kinds of extra responsibilities because of this pandemic. Also we know that it's not just about what's happened so far. Also looking into the future, things look so uncertain. How long is this going to last? When is the vaccine going to come? Will there be enough vaccines to distribute? And it's really going to be very, very challenging times. But it's, what is therefore striking is, difficult as these times are, it's really a test of, leadership with grit and grace. And I want to just, kind of mention two things that have struck me about this in these times. The first, of course, is that, when history looks back on these times, 20, 30 years from now, and they say, were there leaders with grit and grace during the era of COVID? And they will say yes. And of course, they will say almost unusually and disproportionately, the leaders who led with grit and grace were, women, female leaders. The most obvious ones, of course, are, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, and Angela Merkel of Germany, but it's not restricted to that group. We have, the heads of leaders of Austria, Iceland, parts of Scandinavia, Taiwan. So all over the world, I think the performance of leaders, of women leaders, has been exceptional, and really a contrast with leadership in, say, the United States, the UK, or Brazil. So the contrast has been striking. And what's distinguished these leaders is, of course, trust, honesty, openness, respecting people, taking people along, kind of inducing the grit and the grace, kind of induce a kind of trust in them that's made managing this crisis much more effective and much better. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if 20, 30 years from now, or even now, people say the default should be that most leadership positions should be taken up by women, and the bar should be set much, much higher for men in terms of these. Such has been the leadership with grit and grace of so many female leaders in these times. The second thing that struck me and kind of related to this was, I study economic growth around the world, and why some countries are rich, how they've been affected by their histories. And recently I came across a very interesting piece of information which I wasn't aware of. You know that the Caribbean had this horrible history of the slave trade and sugar plantations and violence and all of these things that shaped the trajectory of these nations. But recent analysis I came across showed that, Barbados has been one of the few Caribbean countries that's done the best and kind of much better than Jamaica, which had kind of similar inheritances and so on. Of course, a lot of this has to do with leaders after independence and so on, which I think could well be true. But one key piece of evidence apparently in terms of the history was that, kind of vile as the slave trade was, horrible as its effects were, it turns out that in Barbados, the proportion of female slaves was much greater than male slaves. And for a number of reasons which I don't understand fully, the fact that there were more women even amongst the slaves apparently has had an impact on the future trajectory of Barbados, much better, much more positive than any other Caribbean country. So if you look at history, if you look today at COVID, it seems more and more that this is the way forward, leadership with grit and grace. And of course, women seem to exemplify this so much better than anyone else. So these are just some thoughts I wanted to share with you. I really wish this conference a huge success because it comes at very difficult times, as I said. And once again, I want to congratulate Ipsita Katuria, her team at TalentNomics, and the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation for undertaking all these important and heroic efforts to pursue the cause of giving women more opportunities, more training, more talent, so that they can assume much greater responsibilities in society. Thank you.